Hello. So, our new topic today is more on tissues. Tissues are a group of similar cells that usually have similar embryonic origin. So, they are specialized to perform a certain function. So, tissues are often separated by non-living intercellular materials that cells produce, and these are called the matrix. Now, the person who specializes on this field are called histologists, while the discipline itself, studying on tissues, is called histology. Now, there are four principal types of tissues. We have the epithelium, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. Now, these four major types of tissues perform specific function. Like for example, epithelium, more on covering and lining. So our skin is also covered by a certain connective tissue. Our connective protects, supports, binds together, store energy, and provides immunity. But not to forget, if you want to remember the connective tissue, just remember connect, which is the main function of this tissue. Next, muscle tissue. Muscle tissue is more on movement. So as you move your muscles attached to the bone, it enables you to transfer from one place to the other. Or your muscles inside your body, the blood vessels, the heart, and your intestines are composed of these tissues. Next, we have the nervous tissue. Nervous tissue transmit electrical impulses so that the organism will react to a certain type of stimulus. Like for example, the weather was too cold, so your reaction, the body reaction itself should be shivering or very cold or what else. Now, let's proceed to the features of the epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue are closely packed cells with little extracellular material. Epithelial cells are arranged continuous sheets or single or in multi-layers. Epithelial cells have apical free surface, so that was the exposed area, and the basal part was attached to a basement membrane. Now, cell junctions are plentiful, providing secure attachments among cells. And another character ng epithelial tissues, they are avascular. Blood vessels are located in nearby connective tissue, so naalang malapit sa basement membrane. So epithelial adhere firmly to nearby connective tissue by means of the basement membrane. Now, epithelial have a nerve supply. They have a high capacity of mitotic rate. So, the cells are continuously replicating because number one function of epithelium is to protect against mechanical stress. So, they have to replicate immediately to replace damaged cells. So, epithelial is not only stick to a certain function like covering or lining, but also perform several functions like filtration, lubrication, secretion, digestion, absorption, excretion, transportation, sensory, and reproduction. So, how does an epithelium be categorized? Or how do we classify the different types of epithelium? Now, we use these different categories, like in terms of layers. Now, in terms of layers, there are three categories: simple, stratified, and pseudostratified epithelium. When we say simple, it consists only one simple layer. So the cells are aligned in one layer. And This is good for diffusion, secretion, filtration process, and absorption. While in stratified epithelium, it consists several layers that is good for protection. And we have pseudostratified epithelium. It shows that it is a single layer actually, but when you take a look on the attachment of the cells in a basement membrane, there are only one layer. And all the cells that appears to be in multi-layers, it only consists of one layer. So all the cells were attached to the basement membrane. And this is good for secretion, secreting mucus or attachment to the cilia. Mostly this type of epithelium usually found in our respiratory tract. Now, epithelium also were classified based on the cell shapes. So we have there the squamous, the flat one, which could be found on our skin. Cuboidal, mostly in organs. So they shape like square type that is ideal for secretion. And columnar also is a rectangular in shape, protecting underlying tissues, and they may have cilia, and this is good for secretion and absorption. While transitional, the word transitional, it changes its shape form, so either from flat to cuboidal type. And the change in shape from flat to columnar is due to distension, expansion, or movement of body parts. And one good idea later on we will mention as we go to the types of epithelial tissues and its examples. Now, classification by number of layers and cell shape is also another way. So if we're going to combine all those categories, we have these different types of epithelial tissue. Like for example, simple squamous epithelial tissue. So simple squamous consists of single layer of cells. The shape is flat, so that's why it is called squamous. So it is adapted to diffusion, osmosis, filtration, and found mainly in lungs and kidneys. So endothelium lines the heart and blood vessels, and we also found that in the lymph vessels, forms the walls of the capillaries. So this is the picture of a simple squamous. We have there the squamous cells. And the blue line underneath the squamous cells is the basement membrane, and next to it is just connective tissue. So this is the actual, on the right side, right diagram, this is the actual diagram of a simple squamous epithelium found in your lungs. Now, if in the dorsal aspect, so this is the squamous, irregular in shape or either polyhedral, or some squamous cells usually have hexagonal like piatos in your snacks, and some may have a centrally located nucleus or irregular in arrangement. So this is the parang top view of the cell in microscopy. Next, we have the simple cuboidal epithelium, which consists a single layer of cube-shaped cells. It is adapted for secretion and absorption. So we have here these cube-like cells. Now the nucleus are centrally located, and these are one good example of organ, the kidneys. The glands are one of the good examples of simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. Next, we have the simple columnar epithelium. Comes in two forms. So non-ciliated simple columnar, and we have the ciliated simple columnar epithelium. the non-ciliated simple columnar epithelium, a single layer of non-ciliated rectangular cells. All functions in secretion and absorption. Specialized cells containing macrovilli perform absorption, and goblet cells secretes mucus. So, in short, this is merely found in our intestines. Now, ciliated simple columnar epithelium consists single layer of ciliated rectangular cells, and this one aids in movement. So we have here example of our epithelial layer of our intestines. So we have here the columnar shape. Actually, it is not perfectly rectangular in shape, but closely to the shape of a rectangle. Next, we have the pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Only one layer but gives appearance of many. So all cells anchor to the basement membrane, but some do not reach the surface. Now, the pseudostratified ciliated, we have also the pseudostratified non-ciliated. So two types based on the appearance of cilia. The one has a cilia and the other is the absence of the cilia. So one good example of ciliated pseudostratified epithelium we have here tracheal or bronchia, the respiratory tract. So the respiratory tract is a good example of pseudostratified epithelium. So stratified epithelial tissue, at least two layers of cells named by shape of the cell and the superficial layer. So this is how the stratified epithelial tissue. So the surface tissue, so the squamous cells, as it thickens in layers, the shape also flattens and the nucleus started to disappear as it goes farther from the basement membrane. So stratified cuboidal epithelium also consists several layers of cells in which the top layer is cube shaped. Fairly rare, but function is merely also in protection. While stratified columnar epithelium consists of several layers of cells, which top layer is rectangular, also uncommon, and usually basal layers are shortened irregular polyhedral cells and function for protection and secretion. So we have also, so these are stratified. So one good example of stratified cuboidal, release dito sa mga glands, sa submaxillary gland, sa bibig natin, consists of layers of cuboidal cells, cuboidal epithelium. And this one, so we specifically found this sa mga reproductive part ng male. So this is the epithelial columnar, stratified columnar epithelium. Kasi sa intestines is simple columnar epithelium. Next, we have the transitional epithelium. Consists of several layers of cells whose appearance is variable. So, it depends sa situation ng organ. So, one good example is urinary bladder. If the urinary bladder is filled with wastewater, so the cells become cuboid. But if na-excrete na ang mga contents ng bladder, then the epithelium will appear as flat. So that is the transitional epithelium looks like. So this is the transitional epithelium, mostly found sa urinary bladder. Now, what is glandular epithelium? Mostly, these are the glands that consist of single cell or a mass of epithelial cells adapted for secretion. Now, there are two types depending how the cells release substances as they produce. So we have the exocrine gland and endocrine glands. Exocrine glands secretes into ducts or directly into a free surface. Their secretions include mucus, sweat, oil, earwax, and digestive enzymes. So structural classification of exocrine glands are either multicellular or unicellular glands. So one example of unicellular glands are the goblet cells. So these are found in our between the columnar epithelium in sa mga walls ng intestine. Functional classification of glands could either be holocrine, merocrine, and apocrine glands. Apocrine, holocrine, and merocrine. So this is how they release the substances of the cell. Holocrine accumulates secretions in cell and then the cell dies. So it discharges the contents as a glandular secretion, then discharge cell and replaced by a new one. So one good example is sebaceous or oil glands in our skin. Merocrine. Most exocrine glands form secretion and discharge by exocytosis. So the contents or the contents of the gland were enclosed by a certain or they form into a vesicle before it will be released on the extracellular fluid. Apocrine glands. Secretion accumulates near the top, which pinches off to form secretion. So the cell repairs itself and repeats its function. So one good example is the mammary glands. So a portion of the gland was removed, then it heals and replaced by another cell. So this is an example of holocrine gland. So disintegrating cells and its content, then new cells performing by mitosis. So the cell dies once the contents are released. Apocrine. So a part of the cell was pinched off, then the cell regenerates its part. And merocrine, the contents are released through exocytosis. So the contents are enclosed by a vesicle. So one good example ng ganitong function is yung pancreas. So endocrine glands, called ductless glands, discharge the secretion in the intracellular fluid where it diffuses into the bloodstream. So these secretions are hormones or chemical messengers or between the synapse of the ends of neurons, which regulate mainly body functions. So we're done on the epithelial tissue. So let's proceed sa connective tissue. Now, connective tissue is the most abundant and widely distributed in the body of the organism. The main function is to connect all tissues. So imagine if we don't have connective tissue. Our eyes will fall out, our teeth will fall, it will not be attached in place. Our bones are not connected with each other, so we cannot move freely. So all connective tissues have the same embryonic origin. It came from mesodermal cells called mesenchyme. So what are the functions of the connective tissue? Binding, attachment, support, protection, insulation, storage, and transportation. So what are the general features of connective tissue? It consists of the three basic elements: the ground substance, the extracellular matrix, and the non-cellular type. So, second, does not occur in free surface such as linings, except for joint cavities which are lined with areolar connective tissue, or except for cartilage, it has a nerve supply. Usually high vascular, except for the cartilage na avascular in hyaline also, and tendons which have a small blood supply. So, fifth one, they have a matrix, maybe fluid, semi-fluid, gelatinous or fibrous or calcified, as we have found in the bones. It is usually secreted by the connective tissue cells except for blood and other adjacent cells. And this determines the quality of the tissue. Cells can usually divide like other epithelial tissues, but this is quite slower compared to the epithelial tissue. So cells of the connective tissue. So if immature cell names end in blast, so these cells are reproduced and formed from the matrix. But a mature cell names end in site, so these cells have reduced ability to divide and form matrix. So either could also be fixed cells, meaning appear in tissues in stable numbers, and other is wandering cells found in tissues only in response or infection or injury, like what we have the blood components. So we have here yung example ng wandering. So we have fibroblasts, most of the common type of fixed cells. So they secrete matrix, particularly the fiber are the matrix. We have also another type, the macrophages, developed from monocytes, phagocytized bacteria or cell debris. So they are considered as the wandering macrophages. So muna ang mga wandering cells. Mast cells are found along blood vessels and produce histamine, which dilates small blood vessels during inflammation. So they contain heparin and anticoagulant. They also involved in allergic response. Okay, cells with specific to a particular type of connective tissue. So we have here the adipocytes, osteocytes, chondrocytes, leukocytes, and erythrocytes. So fibers. So we have several types of fibers. We have there the collagen fiber made of collagen. So usually found in bone and tendons and ligaments. Another type, we have elastic fibers. So you can see the diagram, the black fiber, it is called the elastic fibers. We have here another diagram of an elastic fiber represented by a blue dyed in blue. A collagenous is on orange and pink fibers. Reticular fibers are composed of collagen and glycoprotein. They provide support and form loose networks of fibrous tissue. So they are found around fat cells, nerve fibers, and skeletal and smooth muscle cells. They also form stroma or supporting framework of any soft or non-muscular organs such as spleen, lymph nodes, and these fibers also help form the basement membrane. We have also the ground substance that contains variety of large molecules, which are the complex combinations of polysaccharides and protein. So one of example of ground substances, we have hyalur- hyaluronic acid, chondroitin, sulfate, and keratin sulfate. So these molecules in a matrix are for adhesion proteins. Adhesion proteins anchors its cells in position and to provide traction or movement of cells. So ground substance supports and binds together all other parts as a medium for the connective tissue. So what are the types of connective tissue? So first we have the loose connective tissue or the areolar connective tissue. It is loosely arranged. It is found wrapping organs and under skin, holds convey tissue fluids, contains primarily of fibroblast and but also macrophages, adipocytes, and some blood vessels. It contains 3 fiber types randomly arranged. So the ground substance is fluid, semi-fluid, or gelatinous. Uh, Hyaluronidase is an enzyme to produce WBC, sperm, and some bacteria. So this is how an areolar tissue looks like. Next, adipose tissue. So adipose tissue cells are adipocytes. So the shape of the cell looks like a ring, engagement ring, and specialized for storing fat. Adipocytes, so example, this one is the adipocyte, is tightly packed and very little matrix. So function is for energy reserve, insulation, protection, and support. So let's have a closer look. So this is an top view aspect of the adipocyte. So this is one cell adipocyte, and the dark portion consists of the nucleus of the cell, or the nucleus of the adipocyte. Next, we have the reticular connective tissue. Consists of reticular fibers and fibroblasts and forms supporting framework of cells in the liver, spleen, lymph nodes, and bone marrow. So this is an example or the appearance of the reticular connective tissue. Next, we have the dense connective tissue. Dense regular connective tissue consists of collagen fibers arranged in order or not in stratified form, or all cells are arranged parallel to each other. One good example, yung tendon. So tendon is a good example of dense regular connective tissue. Next, we have dense irregular connective tissue. Also have collagen fibers and fibroblasts. Usually found form sheets and resist pulling in many directions. So one good example of our organ is dermis of the skin and bone, muscles. Valves of the heart are the good example. So this is the appearance in histologic sample ng dense irregular connective tissue. The fibroblasts are irregularly or stratifiedly arranged. Next, we have the elastic connective tissue, consists of elastic fibers and fibroblasts. It is found in lungs, walls of the arteries, bronchial tubes, and attachment between the vertebrae. So this is the elastic connective tissue. So elastic fibers are darker compared to the fibroblasts and collagen. Now, what are the specialized connective tissues? First, we have the cartilage, and we have 3 types of cartilage. Now, cartilage has a dense network of collagen fibers, which gives strength and elastic fibers. So the matrix contains chondroitin sulfate, which is rubbery in character, and this is a good support in other organs. So the cells are called chondrocytes, are found in a lacuna. So it is enclosed in a capsule called lacuna. So surface cartilage is surrounded by perichondrium, where blood vessels are located. No blood supply in the cartilage itself. So this is the lacuna, and this is the matrix. So the chondrocytes, so the lacuna enclosed the chondrocytes. So if you have to see in an actual histologic sample, this is a chondrocyte cell. Para siyang two-celled in one. So this is a chondrocyte. So this is the matrix, enclosed by a lacuna, finding space, and the cell was inside the chondrocyte. Next, we have the hyaline cartilage. They are very full of fine collagen fibers. So they are clear. So mostly found in nose, embryonic skeletons, skull, ends of our lung bones, and even in the respiratory tract. So the hyaline cartilage. So the hyaline cartilage. The chondrocyte in lacuna. Next. Elastic cartilage has chondrocytes in a network of elastic fibers. It maintains the shape organs such as epiglottis, larynx, and auditory eustachian tubes and external ear. Ito, your pinna. So this is how it looks like. So the chondrocyte, itong dark fine fibers are the elastic fibers. Fibrocartilage contains visible bundles of collagen fibers and combines strength and rigidity. It also acts as the shock absorber. It's really found in the pubic symphysis, intervertebral disc, and menisci cartilage pads in joints. It is one of the strongest type of cartilage. So this is a fibrocartilage. Next, another type of specialized tissue, you have the bone or the osseous tissue. Consists of collagen fibers for flexibility and with mineral salts that contribute to the hardness of the bones, and the cells are called osteocytes. It is covered with periosteum and lined with endosteum. So it can be compact or spongy depending on how the matrix and the cells are organized. So the osteon, the compact bone, basic unit of the compact bone is called osteon, and or the Harvasian system. It supports and protects, helps provide movement, stores minerals, and also houses blood-forming tissue. So this is the osteocyte. Ito yung Harvasian canal, yung dark solid dot, osteonic canal or the Harvasian canal. Now, to communicate with other osteocytes, the canaliculi, these are tiny, thin projections coming from the lacuna. Next, we have the blood or the vascular tissue. Consists of plasma and formed elements, the erythrocytes, leukocytes, and platelets. Functionally, its cells transport oxygen, carbon dioxide, and other components. It also carries phagocytosis, participate in allergic reactions, and provide immunity and bring about blood clotting. So these are the blood components. The red cells are called red blood cells. Ito namang violet, larger than the RBC, are called the blood components. The platelets is the smallest one. This is the white blood cells and another white blood cells. Next type of major tissue, the muscle tissue. There are only three types. We have there the skeletal, smooth, and the cardiac. Now, the skeletal, smooth, and cardiac were categorized based on action, muscle action, the shape of the cell, the number of nucleus per cell, and the arrangement of fibers. So these are some of the characteristics that made skeletal, smooth, and cardiac differ from each other. So in terms of neural function, skeletal is the only voluntary muscle. The rest of the type are involuntary. The shape of the skeletal are long and cylindrical, while the smooth are like spindle fiber or pointed at each end, while the cardiac is branched but cylindrical. In terms of number of nuclei, skeletal muscles have several numbers of nuclei in a cell, while the smooth a single nucleus together like with the cardiac muscle. In terms of number of layers or arrangement of the layers, skeletal is striated, smooth is not striated, so the cells are parallel with each other or regularly arranged on layers, while the cardiac is striated but with intercalated disc. Aside from that, in terms of action, skeletal contracts easily. The smooth, very slow, while the contraction of cardiac is moderate. In terms of resistance to fatigue, skeletal is not resistant to fatigue, while the smooth is high resistant to fatigue, while cardiac is moderately resistant to fatigue. So those are the added categories of the muscle tissue. So this is how a skeletal muscle looks like. So they are cylindrical, blunt end that in each cell consist of nuclei, several numbers of nuclei. Second, this is a cardiac muscle where consists of one nuclei per cell, branch and cylindrical in appearance, and divided with intercalated disc. So this is the intercalated disc. While the smooth, the fiber or the cell is spindle shaped or pointed at both ends. Only consists one nuclei per cell. And lastly, the type of tissue is a nerve tissue. The nerve tissue, the neurons, consist of the following parts: dendrites, cell body, and the axon. So the dendrites received the incoming signal, while the cell body processed the signal and the axon transmit the outgoing signal. Neuroglia is the protective and supporting cells. So this is how it looks like. So we have there, this is the neuroglia, the dotted small dot components of the nervous tissue. This is the cell membrane of the neuron. This is the nucleus of the neural cell. This is the cytoplasm. So that's it. So we have discussed the 5 major tissues of the organism. Thank you and enjoy. Bye bye.